consciousness, the final frontier. These are the voyages into the universe between your ears. Our mission: to explore collective wisdom, seek out amazing secrets, and spread the message of personal potential.
Hello, everybody. I am Tim Starr, your host for this episode of The Universe Between Your Ears. My co-pilot, Mr. Gabi Musheyev, is missing in action for the moment. He may join us. In the meantime, I'm joined by, we have a new navigator for today. A gentleman by the name of Frank Zaccari. Frank is, after 35 years and as an accomplished corporate executive, author, and entrepreneur, Frank sold his businesses. Now he's leveraging his knowledge and experience that he gained during that journey to help other leaders uncover hidden opportunities, find solutions to pressing personal and professional challenges, and take their businesses to the next level.
Thank you.
So Frank's got all kinds of business experience, and he works right now with helping people get money from lenders and things, investors. But this is not a business show, and so people who might be tuning into this and be like, well, okay, well, what are we going to talk about? Frank, you and I had a really interesting discussion a couple of weeks back, and so I think we're going to at least, and I want you to talk a little bit about your experience in that, but we're going to start the discussion, I think, with what we were talking about then, and then we'll see where we end up.
Sure.
But so welcome. Go ahead and fill in anything I've left out, and whatever you.
That was pretty thorough. You hit it right in the head. This the topic that we had spoken about was something that I've been dealing with for a long time. I was a high-tech executive for well over 25 years, and I was your classic Type A personality, right? And most of what I did was turnarounds of failing companies. So you take that Type A squared,
right.
All right? So it was get it done now, because we may not be here next week, all right? So I had this intense get it done now attitude, classic Type A, kept emotion out of things, didn't want to talk with people, didn't take a lot of input. I knew what to do. I had done multiples of these, and I trusted my decision-making process. And thank God, knock on wood, in that 25-year period, none of the companies failed. So I thought, all right, I'm doing pretty good here. We're doing
not
all
a
right.
bad record.
Doing okay. So we get further down the road after doing many of these, and you find that I'm not getting input from a number of different places. I don't have sounding boards and this type of stuff. So I thought, I don't need that. I know what I'm doing. So I took the burden on myself. Okay, so that burden started off as a little ripple, and then that ripple became a tidal wave, and then that tidal wave pretty much destroyed everything that I had. My temperament changed to the point where I didn't even like me. I was drinking too much. My emotion was basically anger. I was frustrated, depressed. It was like being on a treadmill. It keeps going faster and faster, and you're not going anywhere, and you can't stay on it, and you can't keep up. Then my marriage of 24 years ended while all this was going on. And I went, oh, my God, okay, now what? Not a pleasant time. Everything revolving the business was just an annoyance. I lost patience with my staff. I said, okay, we gotta do something here. When my then wife left, I had custody of my two daughters, who were 10 and 15 at the time, because the wife just left. And I said, well, something's got to change here, because I can't be a high-tech executive traveling all the time, have sole custody of two young daughters, and have to get things done. So I got out of the high-tech world. I bought an insurance agency so I could be a full-time father. And then we had to go through the counseling and okay, what's going on here? And we didn't have the term that we have now. Back then it was just, this is just the way it is, and you got to deal with it. So I would go through that, and I had to learn how to become open, willing to listen and talk with my daughters. I had to be able to share their fears. They had to listen to what my fears were. I had to validate feelings, had to realize I can't fix everything, okay? So for me, for most guys that I know, that's like dying and going to hell. Now I got to do this stuff. I don't want to talk about these things.
Right.
I don't want to deal with them. But here it is. Now you have to, because it's staring you right in the face. So I started, let's go down the process here. And as we were going through this, I ran into this term called toxic masculinity, which you and I spoke about.
Right.
Okay, and if you haven't heard this term, you will. It's the new trendy thing. When I first heard it, I thought it was like a new disease. And I thought, okay, well, was this like cancer? Is it some new illness or something? So I started to look into it. And what I wanted to find out was, for myself, as an average American guy, how does this affect me? Because I'm not a celebrity, I'm not a PhD, I'm not a wealthy business owner, etc., that you see, particularly when the Me Too thing started. Mm-hmm. So I said, well, what's going on here? So I started to look into this, and I always start with, well, what's the definition? And Webster and Wikipedia said that it is toxic masculinity are those aspects of traditional masculinity perceived to reinforce aggression, emotionlessness, and other negative qualities. And I said, okay, well, that's wonderful. And then it says, particularly in the United States.
Huh.
And I went, okay, well, we got a problem here. And then it says it's also validated by the statement, boys will be boys. Okay? So I looked into it a little bit further, and I saw this psychiatrist named Frank Pittman, and what he wrote was, he said men are harmed by traditional masculine norms. And he suggested they have shorter lifespans, greater incidence of violence, violent death. They have ailments such as a more predominant lung cancer, cirrhosis of the liver, and suicide. I said, okay, well, now it's getting interesting. What's happening here with American men? So I looked at it and I said, this sounds like it's more of a cultural thing. And it seems like it's been reinforced since the cavemen days. Mm-hmm. And back then, the strongest individual was the undisputed leader because you had to survive. And it was all about survival. And so that made sense then. And then in the last 100 years, there hasn't been too much of a need to hunt a water buffalo with sticks or protect yourself, fend off a saber-toothed tiger. Right. Yet these same patterns of raising boys and men still continue. Okay? So as we're going through this, I've met with some counselors. One is named Victoria Steele, and she's running for state senate in Arizona right now. And another one is a human capital expert. We used to call them HR managers, now they're human capital. And her name is Linda Batchelor, and she's at the University of Indiana hospital system. And so we started talking about this. And they were saying that the adherence to these traditional male roles limits the emotions that are allowable for boys and for men. Generally, the men are attempting to become the dominant, the alpha male. That becomes the big thing, right? Mm-hmm. And the emotion tends to be limited to anger. All right? So I want to make very clear here. This whole thing of toxic masculinity is not to demonize men. This is not. All men are not bastards here. They're not demonizing men. But the idea is to emphasize that by conforming to these mores and culture that's basically been ingrained in most of us, we're limiting ourselves, and it's causing more damage to the males than it is to anybody else internally. Okay? Again, not an indictment on men. And the idea was, if we get this topic out in the open and we talk about it in safe environments, maybe we can at least get some progress on both sides. For the guys to say, hey, you're not an ass. This is the culture you were raised in. And from the women's side to understand, look, they have to unlearn. Men have to unlearn generations of traditional cultural events. Ladies, we have to do that. And while at the same time, we now have to address the women's movement, which is not going to go away. It's just not going to change. All right? So one of the things, that one of the toxic issues that come out of this, and for most guys, they understand there's a time and a place for being self-reliant and aggressive and all that kind of stuff. But there are people who tend to take this, as we call them, the lunatic fringe.
Mm-hmm.
The lunatic fringe on either side looks at that and says, no, I want things the way they were. I want to still be the king of my castle. I want it to go back to the way it was. Okay? Not happening. It's not going to happen. So one of the issues that comes out is men don't want to be considered vulnerable. And at times we are. If you've been through a divorce, if you've lost a job, if you've had any kind of traumatic situation in your life, there's a great feeling of vulnerability, but you don't want to admit that you're vulnerable.
Right.
All right? So vulnerability is seen as a sign of weakness, and the weakness must be weeded out. Now, this blew me away, Tim, when I read this. So many men are doing this self-weeding because they feel vulnerable. In 2016, this is something Victoria Steele sent me. In 2016, there were 45,000 suicides in the United States. 33,750 were men. That's 75%. 75% of suicides in this country were men taking out because they didn't feel that they fit, whether it's vulnerability was coming into play or whatever else the case might be.
Yeah, shame is a word that's popping into my head over
Shame,
and over. As
exactly.
Yeah.
I am not measuring up, so there's
Right.
a shame issue. So we looked at it and said, okay, what is reinforcing this mindset? Okay, so every day there's a great deal of money that's paid into and for content to reinforce this model. And you can see video games, the violence in video games, the violence in movies, athletics, not all athletics, the athletics, the win at all costs and the rules don't apply to me level of athletics. Okay? Very negative. TV shows that Mad Men is the only one that came to mind when we were putting this together. That showed a different time where harassment, infidelity, and demeaning employees and staff was a given. That was the way it was.
Right.
Okay, overbearing and abusive bosses who get praised because they've built something from nothing and now they have all this power. And then, not to get political here, but speeches and actions by political or business leaders who openly mock and demean, and not picking on anybody individually here. So those are the things that keep reinforcing what we have to do, or what's coming to us. All right. So as males, we can't condone this anymore. We cannot just sit back and let it go by the boards with this boys will be boys mindset. So as we were putting these seminars together, one of the things that we heard from a number of men was men are confused. And I said, yeah, you're absolutely right. We have no idea what to do, what to say, what not to say. It's like, God.
I'm thinking we've always been confused. This is just one more thing.
This is one other thing. Exactly.
Yeah.
And so as guys, you're thinking, well, what's acceptable? All right. Most of us were taught growing up that this is the way you act. Men don't cry. Boys don't cry. They don't talk about emotions or feelings. We do whatever it takes to get the job done. We're self-reliant. We solve whatever comes up. And when I was growing up, the ideal American man was the Marlboro Man.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how many people who are listening remember the Marlboro Man, but he was the guy on the horse by himself out in the range, just him and the horse, didn't need anything, didn't need anyone, took care of everything by himself. Okay? Then American TV back then was Donna Reed, Father Knows Best, Ozzie and Harriet, where the man went to work and the woman stayed home and did errands and cleaned the house wearing pearls and heels. And
Yeah.
I don't ever remember my mother doing that, but that was the image. And then if women worked in those TV shows back then, they were secretaries who basically made coffee, or they answered the phones. If they were teachers, they were pretty much portrayed as babysitters.
Mm.
Okay. So then the 1960s come along, and the 1970s come along, and the women's movement starts, and women start entering the workforce more out of necessity than anything else, because very few. I remember my dad growing up. He was middle class. He was a machinist. He worked in a steel plant, and we didn't have a lot of money, but we had enough money to be a middle class family at that point. Now that's gone, and you just look at the price of housing. You pretty much need 2 incomes now just to survive. You're not living high in the hog anymore.
Right.
So the women's movement started. Women started putting off marriage. Very less and less are getting married. 18, 19, 20. I have 2 daughters. One's 30. She just got married last year. The other one's 25. She has no interest whatsoever. She's following a career path at the moment. So more women graduated from college. They're able to support themselves. They don't need a man to provide for them. And in some cases, they don't want to. All right. So as the women's movement started, women became more aggressive, speaking out. They had marches and rallies. They're running for political office. And right now, according to Linda Batchelor, she said there are more women in college and more women in the STEM, science, technology, engineering and math, than there are men. So this paradigm is changing. Okay, now to cause more confusion, you look at the new wave of television where the man is portrayed as the buffoon, for lack of a better word, and the woman is the strong central character in it. Husband bashing, man bashing became kind of the thing. And if you see TV shows like Modern Family or The Big Bang Theory or Everyone Loves Raymond, you saw that in spades. All right. Now, for some men, they can't handle this. This is the myth is broken. What do we do? What am I supposed to do? We have no training or support system. As again, males don't want to talk about this. I remember when my wife left, I didn't say anything to anybody except immediate family, and I started getting calls from friends and people that I knew, and who had said the same thing that happened to them, which kind of shocked me. Then my closest friend in the world called me up, and he said, "You're going to be okay. You know, I went through this too." And we were on the phone, and I said, "Wait. We worked together for 10 years. I've stayed at your house. You stayed at my house. We have traveled all over the world together. Why do I not know this?" And he said, "Do you want to talk about it?" And I said, "No." And he goes, "Well, that's why you don't know about it." I don't want to talk about it either. So that's the situation that we're finding ourselves in. Some men become resentful. They just want it to be the way it used to be, and that's not going to happen anymore. So when we're doing these seminars, we're talking to businessmen, a lot of very successful businessmen, and they're scared. They said, "Well, do I not hire women anymore? Do I not talk to them? Do I not have a private one-on-one? What do I do here?"
Yeah, and that's you and I know what that is about. That somebody's saying that we're scared, but I think maybe it might be a good idea for us to sort of verbalize that right now. And that's kind of, we're talking about the corporate environment now where, you know, you can't even say, "Hey, you look nice in that dress" anymore.
Yes.
A simple compliment is cause for a trip to HR.
Yeah, it is. It gets crazy. So as we're talking to some of these men, particularly smaller businesses, and they were kind of like me, and they would say, "Look, I run a small business. I'm not into the touchy-feely stuff, okay? I'm all about business. I have to be strong. I have to be self-reliant. I can't worry about parsing every word, okay?" So what we try to say to them is, guys, this is not just a social issue. This can seriously impact, as you just mentioned, your business, your professional life. Okay, this can have a very, very negative impact. All right. When I was going through this with this hyper type A type personality, you start to see turnover occurring in your organization, particularly if they don't like and don't feel valued, and men and women. It's not just a man versus women thing. And so if you're a business owner, the thing we have to now start looking at is a culture. And we've always talked about it, but now we got to start acting it. We have to build a culture of acceptance. We have to build an area where we collaboration. And collaboration is good for business. In the days of yelling and pounding on the table and saying, because I said so,
Yeah.
that never worked well, and it certainly doesn't work now. One of the things in my travels when I talk around the country, one of the things we talk about is a great strategy in a toxic culture is going to fail. You're going to fail. And I ask people for examples, and they start yelling them out. And the ones that come out the most are Enron. Great strategy, just terrible culture. Uber comes up a lot. Now, Uber, I don't know if they're going to succeed or not succeed. They're trying, but are they going to be able to pull out of this? Bear Stearns and Lehman Brothers during the financial meltdown, they just had a very toxic culture. And the one that every time we do this presentation, the one that comes out is always Bernie Madoff. Bernie Madoff, the king of great strategy, horrible culture. All right? You're going to fail if you have a toxic culture. Because a culture it's a self-sabotage. It breeds unhappiness that we mentioned. People lose hope. Mediocrity sets into your organization. People start settling for good enough. And the worst case is the best people leave. And they're just not going to put up with it. They just say, I don't need this. I'm moving on. Okay? So creating or allowing this toxic environment can lead to a whole number of other things. You could have civil or criminal charges. Sexual harassment is far more common because there's more awareness that what was maybe once considered okay is not, and some people are a little oversensitive about it, but you can't do that. A hostile workplace, charges are coming more and more. Legal fees, massive legal fees, potential incarceration. We've seen some of these very high-profile people now going to go to prison. Mm-hmm. So while eliminating this toxic environment is good for business, why is it good for business? It's because the best and the brightest people gravitate toward companies who have a culture of collaboration. I've heard, I don't know how many times I've heard people tell me, well, the millennials just don't care. They're not loyal. They want everything given to them, and on and on. Now, I have 2 millennial daughters, and I spend a lot of time in Arizona, in my house in Arizona, around them and their friends. And I just listen. Mm-hmm. And when you listen to them talk, one of the things that they'll say is, one of them said to me, he said, Frank, when you think of NASA, what do you think? And I said, man on the moon, big deal. That was quite the thing. She goes, yeah, but we don't think that. When we think NASA, we think shuttle blows up, kills the teacher. That's what we saw. And I said, okay, good point. They said, what we saw was businesses pulling up stakes and moving overseas, and our parents losing their jobs through nothing that they did on their own. They didn't cause that. And I said, okay, another good point. And they said, we also saw the financial meltdown where people lost their homes, they lost their life savings, and once again, the majority of the people who were impacted did not cause that. Now, if we caused it, that's one thing, but we didn't. So why should we trust a business to take care of us? Why should we trust or work in an environment that we don't believe is in our best interest? If it's not, we're going to leave. And they leave quickly.
Yeah.
Okay? So what it does from the business perspective is we have to learn, we have to listen. Listen and take input. And sometimes the feedback is not what you want to hear, but you have to be open to it. And once the organization sees as whatever, man or woman, leader, that you value their input and you tell them, here's what I want you to do or what we need done, not how to do it. You tell them what to do, not how to do it. You remember Steve Jobs' old quote? He says, why am I hiring smart people and then telling them how to do the job? Okay? That culture has to become permeate more into the organizations. People thrive in environments where there's mutual respect and appreciation. And good leaders now understand that that good leaders, when they ensure their people feel worthy of their time and interest, they're going to get the best results. And some of these millennials that I've met with have said, it's not written in stone that every 18 months we're going to change jobs. We're going to change jobs if we don't feel that we're valued, or we don't feel we're getting input here. But if that is in place, why leave? Because that's the kind of environment we want to be in, and that's the kind of environment where innovation thrives. Okay? And those who innovate tend to win. Having an and then training. It also becomes a massive issue. Training in not so much on what to do, or not on how to do it, but what to do. Here's what our goals are, and a constant investment in training, in the collaboration and negotiation and working together. Right. And all of a sudden, now you all have a very loyal workforce, and you're not seeing the high turnover. So now what do we do? Okay, like it or not, we have to admit that men have emotions. We have to learn how to channel them, address the emotions without going to anger. Very difficult for a lot of us who grew up when I grew up, because that was the underlying thing. All right? I tell people all the time, punching a hole in a wall doesn't solve anything. In fact, it can cost you a lot of time and money to repair. You might even break your hand. Mm-hmm. All right? Worse than punching the wall is punching a person physically or verbally. And this can land you in jail if you want to talk, or worse. You can be arrested, go through massive legal, and then become incarcerated. So the whole point of what we're doing with Victoria Steele, myself, and Linda Batchelor and myself is, let's go out and present this to businesses. Let's put it in a seminar form. And then let's say, look, if you need to talk about this, let us know. Let's talk. Let's get it out in the open, men and women, because you can't talk to one or the other. You got to have them both. Now, one of the things that came up on the women's side was, and one of the two ladies brought this up, and they said, ladies, one of the things that we did that helped reinforce this is, he said, we even had an initial for it. We would say certain people were NGB. And I went, NGB, what's that? And they said, that's nice guy, but. All right. So if you were growing up and you were trying to be not an ass, and you're trying to be a nice guy, but you saw, well, these younger women are more interested in the guy who's not so nice, who's not treating them so well. And you, well, what's going on here? What am I doing wrong? And then I heard that. Well, you're an NGB, nice guy, but. Someday I might want to marry someone like you, but I don't want to go out with someone. Right now I want to have fun. Yep. And they said, so we helped, as she says, we helped perpetuate that myth that that's what, how men should act, because that's the reinforcement that we as some women gave. Whether we wanted to or not, we did. And that's kind of what happened. So I stopped back and I said, all right, now, how did I, get through this? And it was a lot of counseling, and then just talking and interacting with my daughters. And then as I went back to my businesses, it was for lack of a better term, this. One of them said to me, one of my staff people said, you're kinder and gentler. And I said, I really don't want to hear that. And she said, your first reaction now is to listen. Hear what's being said. And one of the things that used to drive me crazy, Tim, would be when somebody would come in, would be an issue that had nothing to do with work. Okay. Well, this person said this or this. I used to say, I don't care. Yeah. Figure it out. Yeah. So it became more, well, let's talk about this. All right. Let's get both parties in the room. Right. And I learned that years ago. I used to be with AT&T, and we had one of my bosses, senior vice president, said, two guys are bickering about something, and he says, okay, wait, sit down. And he calls the other person up, and he says, come in here. And then he said, okay, Frank, this is Tim. Tim, this is Frank. I want to introduce you guys to each other because apparently you don't know each other. Now, whatever your problem is, fix it.
Mm.
Okay? Now, that was the old style of doing things. Now, in the new style, it's the group tries to modulate itself. And if they see the leader as someone who's more of a facilitator and not the dictatorial pounding the table and saying, no, damn it, do it like this.
Right.
There's sort of a self-weeding that tends to occur. I'm reading Simon Sinek's book, Leaders Eat Last. And he talks about the Marines because he did a big thing with the Marines. And he said the Marines have, and I'm also a mentor at the Veterans Treatment Court in Sacramento. And these are for veterans who have committed a crime, but it's not a heinous crime. And they can have their case adjudicated to the Veterans Treatment Court. And a lot of Marines are in that. And they said we had the circle of safety. Okay, and I said, like the circle of trust in that movie, Meet the Fockers. Mm-hmm. And he said, no, not like that. Circle of safety, the example they gave is lion out in the wilderness there, 4 water buffalo, lion comes close, the 4 water buffaloes back into each other, and no matter where the lion goes, all there is horns. Mm-hmm. Okay, circle of safety. So as the water buffaloes decide to move off on their own through whatever issues come in, pettiness or whatever water buffalo issues are, they separate.
A lot of bickering. Water buffaloes are terrible.
Yeah, I'm not sure what they're doing. But the lion goes and picks off all 4 of them individually because they're outside of that circle of protection.
Right.
Okay? Most problems, if they occur, come from within an organization. So if the people within the organization feel safe, you eliminate as much politicking as you can, as much of the backbiting, as much of the cliques and all that stuff, which are inevitably are going to be there, but you try to minimize that. And if the employees feel a sense of safety at where they're at, then they're focused on how do I make this place better? How do I do my job better? Because I'm not worried about being stabbed in the back. Okay, does that make sense?
Absolutely. And, I want to jump in because
sure.
That was a good intro. That was great. I keep connecting over and over again as you're talking. I keep connecting because you're talking about the business world, but it's a paradigm that can be it's a model that can be just taken home and applied in the house.
Absolutely.
And I can see. You end up with the same benefits, the same results, right? Everybody wins if it's done right, if everybody's on board. And I'm sure that, if you're starting and the kids are already teenagers, they already know everything, maybe a little more difficult, but
it is.
If you're able to have that mindset when your kids are younger in particular, mm-hmm. It's got to be so much easier moving forward in like every aspect. I would think, it's the stereotype of a teenager is that kids get to a certain age and the parents are no longer their close friends anymore, right? They don't have that. Suddenly they're the enemy somehow,
right?
And but I think if your relationship is sort of modeled around this same sort of paradigm, that some of that even would go away.
It does. It would. I think when, in my case, when I traveled a great deal when I was in high tech, so I'd be gone at least 2 weeks out of every month. And so I really didn't have a lot of awareness of what the family dynamic was. Mm-hmm. I mean, when I would be home, I was more like, as my ex-wife called me, you're Disneyland dad. You go do all the fun stuff when you're here, and you're not here during the week when you're on the road, and I have to be the not fun one.
Right.
And I said, okay, well, this is the only way we're able to sustain ourselves is this is what I know how to do and this is what I'm doing. When she did leave, then it was, well, I can't keep traveling every 2 weeks. I can't be gone.
Mm-hmm.
So I bought an insurance agency, which I didn't particularly care for, but I could be home, be a full-time father. Then when you start to step out of that type A model and start talking and listening and not trying to fix things,
Mm-hmm.
I saw a massive improvement in the interaction with my daughters and then interaction with back at work. Okay? Because my daughters were, the old model was I would come home, this is the problem, okay, do this, don't worry about that, don't feel that way. Okay, well, you can't learn very quickly, raising 2 daughters alone. You can't tell a woman not to feel that way.
Yeah.
Okay? This is how
they can do it once.
Yeah, one time. And it's more validating the feeling that I understand why you feel that way, or I understand how you would feel that way. So what do you think we should do, or what are you going to do, or what would you like to have happen, as opposed to, well, just do this and this and this. Okay, and that went a long way in massive improvement, because when your daughters are 10 and 15 and they felt abandoned
Mm-hmm.
and betrayed and lied to by their mother, we had to overcome a lot of that, plus me being somebody who was traveling a lot and had to get reacclimated into the system. So it doesn't matter at what point you come to this realization, you can improve the quality of your life, your family life, your professional life, once we start not trying to fix everything. Does that make sense?
Yep. Yeah. And that's, you're talking about the old, what do I want to say? It's something that's been talked about for a long time, is the male versus female wiring of,
yes.
The woman comes to the husband, or whoever it might be, with the woman comes to the male and says, I got a problem, I got this, she said this, all that. And the guy says, well, let's fix it. And, going back and then she's like, no, in whatever format, she says, no, I don't really want to fix it. We think, well, why the hell wouldn't you want this problem to go away? The only reason for not wanting to fix it is to want to bitch about it more. So we don't understand that somehow them just airing it is enough. My jury's out on that. But, and going to what you were saying earlier about talking with your friend and you didn't know what had happened to him. We generally don't bring problems up to other men unless we want, it's like, I don't know how to fix it. What do I do?
Right.
And so somebody that comes to us and that's not on their mind at all, really. We don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking 2 different languages. That's one part.
Yes. I saw this gentleman present something. I think he was a PhD, and he was talking men's brains or women's brains.
Mm.
He says, men's brain, everything is in a separate box. Put it in a box, put the box in the closet. The boxes don't touch each other. You have a separate box for everything.
Right.
And when you want to talk about something, you take out that box and you talk about the thing that's in the box. That's it. That's all.
Mm.
And then you put it back. And he says, women brains are, everything is interconnected. And they're thinking, a man is thinking about one thing, a woman's thinking about 14.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And so everything relates to something else when in that dynamic, according to this psychiatrist. And he did it in such a way it was hysterical.
Yeah.
It was very, very funny. And that's something where I tended to be more linear.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we're going to do A, then B, then C, then D. Okay, when you have 2 teenage daughters and having never been a teenage girl, that was quite an experience.
Yeah.
But they're going, and their thought process and pattern is way different. And it was incumbent upon me to step back and say, okay, let's talk about this. What is it that you would like to have happen here? What is your goal with this issue? And then they would tell me whatever their case was. All right, then I would then have the opportunity then to tell them what my impression was. The younger one, for example, had some friends. She was an athlete, and then she stopped playing. So now all of her friends in high school were going to practice, and she's not. And so now there's another circle of friends that now starts to evolve. And these are the people who don't do anything. And we start having issues. And she was upset, and I was saying, well, if you don't want to play athletics anymore, that's fine. That's a big commitment. It's a lot of time. It's a lot of work. What I would like is for you to get engaged in some other kind of activity, whatever, be a club or a social issue or whatever.
Right.
And she said, well, what's wrong with what I'm doing? And I said, well, I'm getting a lot of phone calls from the school. I am having to come and pick you up for issues where we seem to be building a pattern of maybe not destructive, but not the best pattern starting to evolve here. And then they would get mad because they're smarter than you are anyway. But some of it stuck. Some of it's sort of settled. And the fact that I wasn't losing my mind and becoming lunatic father and screaming and initially you start taking things away. I'll take away your phone, take away this. It's not working. So let's find another way to interact with the family, because you have to have this. You can't have a disruptive or destructive family unit and expect any other part of your life to be successful. It's just not.
Yeah,
it's not.
Well, kudos to you first of all for evolving this way. I mean, I gotta believe that the percentage of guys who are like a serious type A who would actually change out of their own free will, is pretty small.
I agree.
Congratulations. I had something else that crap. It's a senior moment.
I know.
But there are so many different pieces of all of this. Part of the discussion that you and I had on the phone a couple of weeks back involved the part that it's the programs that have been developed on both sides, male and female. It's the you pointed it out too, but the women have had a big part in just supporting this male
toxicity.
Yeah, and to have and I guess it's what we tend to do, sort of as a society. That some big thing comes up and some big wrong that needs to be straightened out, and then there's the knee-jerk reaction to go way over to the other side.
Yes.
There's no moderation, if anything, and the pendulum just swings back over, and then it gets too far, and then somebody finally starts ringing a bell, and okay, let's go run back the other way. But it's I don't know. Maybe we're getting to a point. I'm just rambling now, but maybe we're getting to a point as human beings, or even just as this particular society, where because we have such immediate access to information on everything, to the internet, that these cultural changes can happen much more quickly than it used to be a case, right?
I think it is. There's more awareness, and what and there's also a polarization. So you can become aware, but then you start picking and choosing what it is you want to see and read. And then you become more polarized, which I think as a country, I think is where we are right now, is all this polarization that's occurred. And what I have discovered and learned, and with Linda and Victoria when we go on the road, it's you have to talk. All right, you don't have to agree, but you have to talk, and you have to be civil.
Yeah.
And let's have discourse. And let's at least be open to the other person's position, why they are thinking the way they're thinking, and why they're coming from that point of view. And then you can explain, well, here's my point of view, or what we believe, or what I see is occurring. And then you hopefully find a common ground.
Right.
Okay.
Go ahead and finish.
I'm seeing that happening more in these seminars that we're doing. We're starting to see that more. It's more like okay, I didn't know, that makes sense. All right. Yeah, that does seem to fit. And it's still, well, what can I say? What can I not say? All right. Well, you would say, I've heard these women say, if you wouldn't say it to a man, then don't say it to a woman. Okay. Good rule of thumb. Would you say, hey, you look hot in that outfit, guy? You're probably not. You say, nice suit. Okay, fine. All right, something along those lines. And non-threatening, not aggressive, just a passing type of thing. But if you don't dialogue, and this is a thing that like in the political side is driving everybody nuts, is no, you're not listening to the other side at all. You don't want to hear it. I'm defriending you or unfriending you or whatever the term is. Yeah. I'm not even interested in remotely in what it is you think or say. Okay, and that's not going to solve anything. It's got to be discussion and dialogue, and let's start setting a set of behavior and patterns that we're going to accept in this operation. Okay, be it at home. These are the guidelines. These are the things that we agree to and that we're going to stay within. And the same thing in the business side. And I hope to God we see this more coming into the political side.
It'll happen just because, it's you can't have it happen everywhere else and not happen there.
Right.
Maybe the last section of the culture that it affects, but yeah,
could be. And the point you made, Tim, about and it's a natural. I saw it for years in the tech world. Is this isn't working? So instead of moving here where it might work, we move way over here where it doesn't work on the other side. Okay, and that's again continuing dialogue. And part of what we try to teach businesses is, if you're going through this cultural change, if you're making this thing, start laying out milestones. What is it we're going to try to accomplish? And then let's meet and let's discuss these things. And let's not go off on tangents and barriers and all these other things. Stay on task, stay on topic. And the best stories I had was in the military. I was enlisted. I was a medic in the military. And for whatever reason, I was running the pediatric clinic, which should have been somebody much higher ranked than me, but nobody wanted to deal with 90 kids a day, apparently. Yeah. So I'm going into these Monday morning briefings with officers and people several ranks ahead of me, and the colonel, who was the head of the hospital. And what I learned from watching him was there was one chair in the room. That was his. Everybody stood. This is the military, different rules. And he'd walk in just as the meeting started. He'd put his watch down where he could see it. He said, okay, who's up first? And you had to say, here's what I want to talk about. Here's the agenda. This is how much time I need. And he had gone out elk hunting and comes in. The first guy up starts saying, well, sir, how was the elk trip? And what did you find? And he spent his 5 to 7 minutes talking about the elk hunt. Colonel says, okay, done, next. And he goes, well, sir, we didn't get to. And he goes, well, then stay on task. Yeah. All right, you want to talk about elk? We'll talk about elk. All right, your time's done. So when you're trying to make this change, it's let's stay on topic. Let's get the agenda. Let's not modulate too far away from it. And let's see if we can come to a resolution. And then move to the next step, and then continually following up.
Over and over as you're talking, I'm relating these to like relationship situations and things.
Yes.
And what's one of the things that's sort of a cause for me, I guess, is one of the problems that we have that blocks real communication between any two people is that we don't learn how to. Most people are just not introspective at all.
Yes.
And so we're not questioning our own beliefs about anything. We're just, something comes along and makes us feel warm and fuzzy, and all right, that's what I believe now. And then something else comes along 20 minutes later and it's the opposite, but that makes me feel warm and fuzzy now, and now that's what I believe. And there's no questioning of, why do I vacillate back and forth or anything. And so somebody in that position can't I forget, I'm not getting putting my finger on the exact word I want to use, but they can't do a good job of presenting their own position on anything.
Mm-hmm.
But I think if you're, let's say it's you and you're raising two kids, and you say, it used to be that there would be, there's no family time anymore.
Yes,
a lot of ways, right? You used to have dinner every night. Everybody sat down at the dinner table together, and there was no phone to be playing with. So you all had to talk.
Yep.
Right? It may or may not have been very productive, but it was relationship building. And then that kind of went away to a lot of people were just like Sunday night. Just well, do whatever you want the rest of the week, but on Sunday, the whole family has to be together. And then that's going away.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you have a family to raise and there's one person who sees where the ship ought to go, but nobody else is on board with it, that it's tough. It can't help but be tough. And then everybody's got their own agendas and has no rational reason for why they have that particular agenda that day.
Yep.
And it's nothing but a battle the whole time. But if you can take that different perspective and be a little more proactive, I guess, and say, I don't know, once a week, we're going to sit down and talk about stuff, about goals, about what, where do we want to go? What do we want to do? There are families that's, I used to think that my family was more or less functional. As I've become older, it's so much easier to see how dysfunctional stuff was. But and so you see families that travel the country together, doing things. They have they have projects and businesses and just causes that they all are committed to, engaged, and that's a good word. They're all a piece of. They all want to do the same thing, and if you can get people on board that way, oh my God! And when it's family, man, the bonding and the power that you can have and the benefits
it's enormous.
It's enormous. Yeah.
And in some cases, what I discovered, my daughters are about as polar opposites. Mm. And one's an artist and one's very active, more athletic. And it's okay. You don't have to be an artist and you don't have to be an athlete. You be what you be. But let's not demean either one, number one. Let's be as supportive as we can for both sides. And the older one, who's the artist, the younger one's playing in a tournament and is out of town. And I said, well, you can't stay here by yourself. Mm-hmm. Well, I don't want to go. I said, well, she doesn't want to go to your dance recitals, but she has to. Okay, so this is a compromise we have to make for the overall good of what we're trying to accomplish here. And once we started getting not a 100% buy-in, but consensus. Mm-hmm. Okay, I need to do this because it's the right thing for what we're doing over here. Things got significantly better. And then it was important for me, playing the role of mom and dad and wage earner and everything else, and taxi, was my agenda can't be the top and the sole thing anymore. Now, growing up, I grew up Italian. I grew up in my house was different because we thought my mother was going to die. She had cancer when I was 14. And back then, any kind of cancer was pretty much a death sentence. Mm-hmm. And so while she was recovering, my father had to do everything. All right, we had 5 kids, and I was 14. The youngest was 5. So I had a different model that I could see. I had a man my father did everything. He took us to places. He cooked. He did whatever had to be done. Okay, and that's just the way it was. I would then see other families where that was not the case, and I'm dad, and therefore everything that I want is the way it's going to be, and I don't really care what you think or what you want. If you're an athlete and you've got skills, too bad, because I don't want to go pick you up. You're interfering with the world of me. Yeah. And we can't have the world of me anymore. It has to be a world of us. And it becomes a very difficult thing.
I think that's interesting. I think your father modeled for you what you needed to do when this came to you.
Absolutely. No question.
Had he not done that, what you might have had a very different journey.
I've heard that, yes, and I've heard I didn't go out with anyone for years because I wasn't going to introduce anyone else into the element until my daughters were at least away in college. And I heard that a few times. This is very unusual for a man to do this, and I went, well, it comes down to you have to do it. Yeah. There wasn't a lot of options here. I mean, I've got these children. They are the be-all and end-all in my life, and I have to make sure that they're okay. So everything else we've got to put on a back burner, and we've got to get them through school. We got to get them launched. We got to get them jobs and then we'll see what else is, what do I do going forward after that? Now they're 25 and 30, doing very well. So it's not now I can get involved in more things that I would like doing now.
Right.
But it's your life ebb and flows, just like in business. Here's where we are now. This is where we need to focus. Right now, we're over here now. Okay, now we can adjust accordingly. But it keeps going back, and I've said this many times, but I didn't have a good example for it until I read Simon Sinek's book, This Circle of Safety. When the people in your family feel safe and secure, that you have their back, that you have their best interest in heart, even though they might not agree with everything, that they understand that we're doing this for the overall good, okay, then you have more of a willingness, I think maybe that's the wrong word, yeah, maybe that is more of a willingness to be proactive and engage with the family unit or the business unit or whatever it is that you're dealing with, because there's a sense of you're not out to try to screw me over. You're not looking to nitpick everything that I do, or you're not attacking every position that I have. All right? And it could come down to my daughter saying, well, I want to go to Lake Tahoe for the weekend when I'm 16. And I said, well, no, that's not going to happen. You're not going to go to Lake Tahoe when you're 16 with this group of, well, you don't trust me. And I said, well, whether I trust you or not, it's not the point. The fact is you're 16. And no, you're not going to go do that. Okay? And you can be mad and stomp your feet and whatever else you want, but no, in your overall best interest, that's not the right thing for us to do here at this point in time. Mm-hmm. Well, there was some very difficult days that went by, but later you saw, okay, I can see, I've heard them tell me, I see why you did that, because at that age, I wasn't making the overall best decisions. Something could have happened. And even if I made good decisions, the people that I'm with might not make good decisions.
Right.
Now see that they weren't making good decisions, and I probably would have gone along, and something not good may have or could have happened.
Right.
But and I see that in all factors, in the business side, the professional side, the personal side, is what you have to say and what you do is value, first and foremost. There is value here. And because I value you, we're going to listen, and then we're going to make a decision that maybe yours, we address yours a little bit later, or maybe yours becomes a higher priority a little bit further down the road for this reason.
Right.
Okay. And then it's.
Yeah, no, I think a big piece of getting somebody else on board with this is also the way that, not even opposing, just the way that people's positions are presented. Right? It's like an aggressive, in-your-face sort of, this is what I want to see happen, you're going to do this, versus, okay, guys, this is, it's just simple talking.
Mm-hmm.
That number one, that to start with, you want to get, because it's simple, it's sales, right?
Yes.
You want somebody to agree with you, to go along with what your agenda is, what your end goal is. You have to approach them in a way that they're going to be willing to listen.
Yes. And show them not what you want to say, but what the benefit to them. This is the benefit to you by us doing this. Here's how we all gain by this particular course of action or decision that's being made.
And don't you think that even if somebody doesn't get what they want, sometimes it's enough for people to feel like they're being heard.
Yes.
Right. Even, and I think kids in particular, I think they're going to, at times, they are going to test things and present a position that's irrational, and they know it.
Yep.
Just to see what the reaction is from the other side, and let's see if Dad is really committed to this new way of talking.
Yes, absolutely. And no matter what decision you make in life, it's going to be tested. Yeah. So whatever you decide to do, be prepared for a test to come. We had one situation with one of my daughters, and it was I bought them phones very early when the cameras first came out in phones, right? And they're young. And I was getting flack. You're overindulging your kids. You're giving them too much, blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, I don't see your name on the birth certificate, so basically back off. But the older one would go and I'd say, where are you going to go? And I'm going to go to Allison's house. Okay, fine. Go to Allison's house. No problem. So I had to learn how to text and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. So, are you still at Allison's house? He said, yeah, of course. And I said, is Allison's mom there? He said, yeah. He'd take a picture and send it to me. Yeah. 2 minutes. And then the picture didn't come through. And then we said, okay, now where are you really? Mm-hmm. And I'm going to come pick you up. And then there's the stomping the feet and the whole thing. But, you told me you were going to be here. I trusted you to be here, and you violated that trust. And therefore, you're going to have to re-earn this again. Mm-hmm. All right. Now, the younger one would watch all this, took pictures of all of her parents in advance.
Yeah.
And so, same type of thing. Are you at who's at her house? Yes. Is there one? You want me to send you a picture of her mother? And I said, no. So they're home, right? And I said, take a picture of the license plate of the car. She would go, shit. But there's always going to be that testing. I'm going to test you no matter what it is.
Yeah.
But these are the principles. These are things we're going to adhere to. And we're not going to bend on the fundamental issues.
Right.
The other issues, okay, it's not that important. You got to decide something Marines tell me all the time in veteran treatment court. Are you willing to die on that hill?
Right.
Okay. If it's not an issue to die on, then all right, let's figure out another way to make it work, or a compromise, or it's not. But it doesn't violate the core principles, the core competencies, or the core guidelines.
Values.
Values. Yeah. Good word. Good word.
So I think it's time, whether we like it or not, I think it's time for us to wrap this up.
Okay.
So is there I know this is like this program that you're working on is obviously is aimed at corporate entities, but is there any sort of like, do it at home kit kind of thing that you guys have?
It's coming.
Or,
it's being put together right now, almost like a webinar approach. And here's things that, and just not, we're not all the way there. Senator Victoria Steele's election is August 28th, so her focus right now is finishing. And we've got the structure laid out. Now it's just a matter of let's delve into it and put something together so it's out there.
Right. Okay. And then that brings me into the opportunity for you to let everybody else out there who's watching or listening know how, where can they dig in and get more information from you, and
the easiest thing
that at some point the new program will be available from.
It'll be very probably beginning of the year. So I have a website which is frankzaccari.com. You can look there. There's like two emails. One is from the website is info@frankzaccari.com. The other one is frankzaccari@gmail.
Zaccari is not spelled like Smith, so
no, it's spelled Z like zebra, A, double C like in Charlie, ARI, and we're getting a lot of feedback right now from different organizations and from different individuals, basically. And as we're collecting the information, we're letting them know, we're going to be, it's probably going to start in Tucson, and then we're going to start rolling it and seeing where it comes out of there, and then get an input from the people that we're meeting with. How do we make this, like we've been saying here, how do we make it better? Yeah. What areas of this really you could have done without? What could we have elaborated on over here? And we'll get this feedback, and then we'll have a webinar for it, and then people can subscribe to the webinar and decide, how much where it fits for them and where it doesn't, and if they want to bring it into their businesses. We're seeing a number of the human capital. I love that term as opposed to HR manager. Human capital people are saying we have to become more proactive in bringing these kinds of things into the company to get these kinds of dialogues and conversations going. Because until that occurs, we're to everything we've talked about for the last almost 2 hours.
Yeah.
Could occur.
Yeah. All right, great. I had nothing to say except thank you.
Thank you.
This was good, and I'm glad we finally got it going and made it happen.
Perfect.
So
I'll see you Monday.
To seeing you. Yeah. All right. All the folks out there in podcast land, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
See you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hi, this is Tim Starr. Thanks for joining me and Gabi on the universe between your ears. We really appreciate you taking the time to hang out with us for a little while. And we'd like to see you again. So be sure to subscribe wherever it is you're consuming the podcast from, whether it's YouTube or Stitcher or iTunes or whatever the hell else is out there. We want to see you again. We also want to hear from you. So let us know what you think of each episode. Let us know if you've got an idea for a future episode that you think would be just killer. Absolutely, let us know. All right? Thanks again, and we will see you next time around. Bye-bye.